So welcome. We are presenting today the presentation called Beyond the RFP, Humanities Foundations, Some Insight and Guidance. I am recording the session, so we will move forward and have this available to anyone who's interested and for those who couldn't attend today. And this presentation is being hosted by the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs, as well as the Center for the Advancement of Humanities. And with that, I'm going to jump in. My name is Avery Flash. I work again in the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs. And today we're going to cover, along with my co-host, Dr. Kim, we are going to cover just a few things regarding humanities, the support for humanities research in the form of funding, ideally, and then how also support can be obtained through our units, whether it's the Center for the Advancement of Humanities or the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs. So without further ado, I'm actually going to turn it over to Dr. Kim, and he can talk a little bit about the Center for the Advancement of Humanities.
Thanks so much, Avery. My name is Drew Kim, and as Avery mentioned, I direct the Center for the Advancement of the Humanities. Came to Marquette in 2017. I'm also an associate professor of theology. I'm going to try to talk for about 5 to 7 minutes or so here. I want to focus on a couple of different things. I want to talk about ways that the CFA can support faculty and also some of the initiatives that we have going on, and kind of bring that conversation into a larger conversation that Avery will then move forward into sort of some trends, just a few trends that we've noticed in terms of what's happening with some of the major philanthropic organizations when it comes to grant funding and so forth. So first off, I want to make sure that everyone who is watching this is aware of an event that we are hosting on Tuesday, October 25th. You can find it on our website. But we have Len Casuto and Bob Weisbuch coming to campus. They're giving a talk on the future of graduate education at 3 p.m. and there will be some other events scheduled. You can find it all on our website. They're, of course, the authors of the book on the new PhD and kind of the direction things are moving, ways that connects to some initiatives we have at the center with regard to career diversity and some of our work with the Humanities Without Walls grant that we received from the Mellon Foundation, from the efforts and work of Maggie Nettesheim-Hoffman, who helps drive that forward. So what I think maybe, so in addition to that, we also, we run seminars, or we have given talks on the kind of regular research grant proposal, the summer faculty fellowships. Something else I want to make you aware of is our Story Experience program. I'd love anybody who's interested in being a part of that to reach out to me. We launched it this year. It's our first year. We're doing it in joint partnership with UWM, with Ann Basting and her Center for 21st Century Studies there. It's housed currently in the English department, and students receive 3 credits for taking the class, but then the class consists in being partnered with a community organization. It's really kind of awesome what they do. It's a service learning platform that allows them to be embedded in a community partner where they learn asset-based approaches to community building, art-based engagement activities, trauma-informed story engagement and ethics, and improvisational storytelling techniques. So it gives the students an opportunity to apply the humanities and humanistic inquiry in a concrete space, so to speak. Which goes to kind of my next topic about sort of the way our identity has been developing in the Center for the Advancement of the Humanities. And I want to focus on 2 major pillars here, and then I can connect that into some trends that are happening with the larger philanthropic grant funding organizations. So the 2 pillars are student success and social impact. Student success and social impact, and those, of course, implicate one another and are deeply connected. So student success, around that pillar, we have Multidisciplinary scholarship, the story experience would be another example of community engaged scholarship. And then two things that go together, and I'm trying to bring them more onto the level of undergraduate, although they're usually more associated with graduate students, but that's alumni networking and career diversity. And so the reason I think that these are so important is because there's a misnomer among graduate and undergraduate students that if you get a degree in the humanities, if you're passionate about the humanities, this impairs your capacity to get a job, and people want to get a job when they graduate, which is fair enough. The issue with the view that a humanities education impairs your ability to get a good career, the issue with that view is that it's just false. I'm increasingly convinced that this is just a false view. Part of this is through work I've done through the center with human resources organizations around Milwaukee. But the major driver of this in shaping my thinking has been my talk with alumni. That's why I think alumni networking and alumni events where alumni come back and talk about their humanistic education and the values they received at Marquette are so important. I've been in several different meetings with donors who have careers that don't directly seem associated with the humanities. You know, people who are investment bankers in New York, people who have run security administrations for large hospital networks and so forth. And over and over and over again, they tell me that they attribute their career success to values they learned in the humanities at Marquette, to our Catholic Jesuit mission, and to the ways that they were shaped as persons. And I had one conversation in particular that always sticks with me, where the donor was telling me, he said he thought it made no sense to him for an undergraduate degree to be like a technical vocational training. Said when he's hiring people, what he's more interested in is the values they have, their ability to communicate, work in teams, respect the values of other people, know what their own values are, and have integrity. And then when they hire them, like, we'll give them the training. And my conversations with human resource people in human resources have been similar. The human resources have increasing influence in terms of the hiring processes at companies. And there's increasing attention to these kind of humanistic values. And so I want to, like, through the story experience program and through the work we're doing with HWW and graduate students, try and continue furthering career diversity as a value that not only conforms to our Catholic Jesuit mission about discernment and vocation, but also just dispels the myth that if you're passionate about English or history or philosophy or theology, the only way that can translate into a career is if you become a professor, which isn't true. Some of us do that, but not everybody does. And there's so many real life examples, which is why that alumni networking is so important in those career diversity initiatives, which of course also connect then to the piece about social impact, which is where I want to transition into the conversation about the movements of some of the philanthropic donors and grant funding institutions, and in particular Mellon. I'm going to pull Mellon out as an example. So for those of you familiar with Humanity Without Walls, the basic idea and premise has been one of moving beyond an extractive model of research that's more hierarchical, that views the professor as the kind of expert and views experience of community partners as epistemically valid, and tries to form joint partnerships that are nested in a posture of reciprocity and redistribution rather than kind of a hierarchical setting or an extractive setting. And what that has been focused on, the major goal that Mellon has been articulating, especially recently with the change of leadership, is a focus on social impact and how the scholarship we're doing furthers, for example, racial justice as a primary focus, but also just justice for any marginalized community, or furthers the common good. That's in fact been moving so strongly in that direction that in several instances, Mellon has preferred to just reach out directly to community partners and kind of get rid of the university, understood as a kind of middleman in this process, and go directly to community institutions and offer them grants directly. Now, the good news is that we had our big HWW consortial meeting like a couple weeks ago now in Chicago. And at that meeting, one of the things we discussed was that Mellon is starting to rethink that strategy, because as it turns out, the role that universities play and the work that folks like Abria and Aaron do in terms of that post-award process and managing the grant and figuring out what the sub-awards are and all of that kind of comptroller and all of those things that go into it. A lot of times the community partners aren't equipped to handle that kind of that kind of work, which is work that I often think we don't value enough, because it's not trivial and it's nothing can function without it. But so they're having this realization. So what we need to understand in terms of trying to apply to grants going forward is that the trend that it's moving is that we are more relevant to the degree that we can demonstrate that what we're doing has a social impact and addresses one of the urgent problems that humanity faces, issues communities face, and that it's not being done in a kind of ivory tower model, and it's not being done merely for the sake of it, not to demean the importance of research, products, outputs, and that kind of thing, books and conferences and symposiums, but rather that there's a sustainable relationship that universities are fostering with community partners that furthers the common good in the communities in which the university is nested and a part of, not separate from. So I think there's more initiatives going on at the university too. I just was at Faculty Senate where Gary Meyer was talking about the work we're doing to try to get the tenure and promotion process to recognize the value of community engaged scholarship and work that we do with community partners. And that work will also be increasingly valuable going forward in terms of working with grant funding institutions and philanthropic organizations. So I could go on more, but I think I'll probably cut it off there and hand it over to Abria. It's yeah, thank you for inviting me, and happy to answer any questions.
Yes, all great info. And as Drew mentioned, I'm going to kind of dive into more of the support for all those concepts and ideas and projects and endeavors. So that's the role that our office, the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs, looks to fill, which thank you, Drew, for pointing out, it is no small task. It is a lot of work pre and post, in order to support those projects. It's no easy task to do it all. So that's why it takes the team here. And what I'm gonna briefly talk about is finding that funding, how to do that, and then making sure that funding that you did identify is a good match. You're gonna want to qualify that, and then a few examples to go through, just as an example of who you can reach out to for possible funding. Okay, so just to begin with, I want to put down a little brainstorm of ideas of where you can look for some potential funding prospects. So first and foremost, I have to point out that our office does have a Finding Funding webpage. So you can go there and start brainstorming some ideas and places to look. On that webpage, we do have information and a link to the Pivot database, which I have listed here. This is where you're going to go to find any potential funding source in the world. It is a huge database that Marquette subscribes to, an international database if you're so interested and if that makes sense for your work. But no, that is a very comprehensive resource to you available here at Marquette. Then, of course, there's the federal agencies that I'm sure many of us know about, the NEH, the NEA, and so forth. The local foundations could also be a good fit for the work that you're looking to do, especially with that community engaged component, if that is something you're looking to do. I encourage you to not only touch base with us in the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs, but also we can connect you with advancement, because oftentimes there is some relationship um, building there if we don't already have an existing relationship with those local donors. Then moving on to national foundations, such as the John Templeton I have listed here, and I'll briefly touch on too. That is on a larger scale, so know that if you have a project that's growing and you're looking for a greater source of support for that, there are some national opportunities. And then some other things that sometimes people don't think about when they're brainstorming for ideas and seeking funding ideas. Some publications that you receive, professional organizations, listservs that you're signed up for, any material that's sent out and disseminated around your work or your studies. Make sure you look into and see what's going on, see what those trends are that Drew mentioned, what funding sources are out there, what kind of projects are they funding. That could all be listed there. Then also check out any forums that are available, webinars, workshops, things like that. Organizations, foundations, large and small, often offer things like this that you can go and check out. And then, of course, check in with your colleagues, your peers, your mentors. If you have mentors that you still keep in touch with, make sure you talk to them and see what their ideas are. Once you have some ideas for that, you're going to want to qualify them. So you want to spend a little bit of time making sure that you're ready to keep looking into it and that they're a good fit for the work that you're trying to do. So first and foremost, I got to point out to read those guidelines. You need to make sure that you understand what they're looking for and what you're doing, and to see if that's a good fit, and then all the particulars of what that relationship would be. So that would be in the guidelines. You can also check out the funder's website beyond those guidelines for the RFP, which is the request for proposals. That would have some further guidance too. You're going to want to, again, kind of check and see if the projects that they've funded sound similar to the work that you're looking to do. Does the sponsor typically give awards to organizations if they're going to be funding Marquette University for work that you're doing affiliated with the campus here? Make sure that that's something that would be of interest to them. Are you eligible as the lead for the work that you're looking to do for the opportunities and solicitations that they're posting? And then another thing to check would be the budget and timeline to make sure wherever you're at in seeking funding for your work aligns with what they are offering, because you're going to be partners in moving your work forward. And then check for the availability of a program officer or some sort of representative from the sponsor to see if they are willing and able to offer some feedback, because doing that, you can sometimes garner some pretty valuable insight and feedback on your project concept. So with that, I'm going to take it just a little bit further, because that, if that is available, we really, truly, highly encourage you to do that. And if you can do it at the very beginning of your process, that's even more valuable. Again, they can offer feedback into your project as a whole, your proposed work that you're looking to put forward into their pipeline for consideration. And connecting with them can sometimes give you information that you wouldn't otherwise find written in the RFP or the website or anything like that I mentioned earlier. So what does that look like when you're touching base with a program officer for this kind of pre-proposal contact? You're just going to want to introduce yourself and your work and your project idea. Seek guidance on what they think as far as your project's alignment with their program and their priorities. As Drew alluded to before, priorities can be changing with different foundations, and you want to keep in touch with what their priorities are, and maybe even they can give you insight into where they're going to in the future. You can also discuss what separates the best proposals from those that, don't get noticed as much. If there's any common mistakes you want to avoid with that particular organization. If you had a chance to attend the workshop or a webinar that they did offer, you can follow up with some additional questions that perhaps weren't able to be addressed during that presentation. And sometimes you can even, if it's not available online, find some examples of funded projects, see and ask if you would receive feedback from the reviewers on your proposal. All of that is very valuable information too. So bottom line, any kind of contact you have with a program officer or a representative from the organization, you're going to want to be prepared with a very succinct overview of your project. Be educated. You're going to want to make sure you check out their website and any other additional information that they already have out there. Make sure you've read through that, and then be available when they are to have that conversation, whether it's via email or Zoom, what have you. Okay, so diving into just a few examples of foundations that do support the humanities. I'm going to run through just a couple here. There's quite a number of funders out there that can support your work. So I'm just going to pull out 4 of them today for different reasons. The first would be an individual award, such as a fellowship. There are lots of fellowship opportunities out there. So I'll quickly touch on the American Council of Learned Societies. Then I will talk about the APS, or the American Philosophical Society's Franklin Research Grant. That is an opportunity that is a very small and targeted one that could be beneficial for your project, depending on where you're at. And then a more regional opportunity with the Wisconsin Humanities. And as I mentioned earlier, the larger national level one of the John Templeton Foundation. So jumping in with ACLS, if you have, your own kind of well-defined individual project, and you're looking for support for it, most often in the form of dedicated time, fellowships could be a good fit for you in support of your work and your project. The ACLS is one organization that offers fellowships. Again, there's a lot out there. This is just one example. The ACLS supports research proposals from scholars in all disciplines of the humanities. In its most recent competition, which just wrapped up, so it would be for 2022-2023, given the really disproportionate effect of all that's been going on with the pandemic, and early investigators, those early in their careers, they are seeking to support those PhD candidates, or not candidates, those who have a PhD but do not hold a tenured faculty position. So this is a great opportunity for those who are looking to really jumpstart and get going on their career in supporting their projects that way. In 2022-23, they're looking to award up to 60 fellowships. They do get a lot, but that's still a pretty good number as far as the number of awards we have out there. Again, they are looking to select fellows who are broadly representative across the variety of humanistic scholarships, a variety of fields of study. So the ultimate goal of the project should be a major piece of scholarly work, though, that can take the form of a monograph, articles, even digital research projects, things like that. And it can be at any stage of the development. So this is something that you'll want to consider if you're ready to put forward a grant and get some support for you. With ACLS, it is in 2 stages. So the first stage, as far as after you submit your proposal and they're reviewing it. So keep this in mind when you're putting together that proposal. The first stage, there's some scholars that will be in your discipline, and they will judge your proposal, and then they can really dive in and take a look at it and read it and talk about the benefits and the great things that you're hopefully putting forward to them. They also have a list of ACLS awardees and some brief project descriptions on their website, so know that is available. And they even have a document called Writing Proposals for ACLS Fellowship Competition. So that is available on their website too. You can't get, even better than that than to have, a guidance directly from ACLS on how to write an ACLS proposal. Another great thing about submitting to ACLS is that you will be automatically entered into other fellowship opportunities that they have with no separate application. So know that you submit one application, you're being considered for multiple opportunities. And they also have, with that application, they also have small seed grants for ACLS project development grants. So something to look into, a lot of great opportunity there. Oh yeah, also another good thing about ACLS is that you can request feedback on your proposal. So this is great too, because you can get insight on what you put forth to them and get some thoughts back on how they viewed what you wrote and perhaps even your project overall. The next one I'm going to briefly talk about is the American Philosophical Society, and specifically their Franklin Research Grants. So this again is something that's a little bit more targeted and on a slightly smaller scale. It can be for up to $6,000, and it is particularly designed to help meet the cost of travel to libraries and archives and things like that for research purposes. They don't cover, just so you know, because it is targeted for travel to do your research like that, they don't cover attending conferences, cost of publications, replacing salary, something like that. But this is a great opportunity if you have a need for travel or some kind of doing some kind of research like that at the library or archive, that this is out there. The eligibility is just to have a PhD. And again, they are particularly interested in supporting those scholars who have just recently received their doctorate. They also have a list of previous awardees online and contact information for someone with actually their director of grants that you can ask with if you have any questions about what you're looking to put forward to them. They have two deadlines or opportunities for you to submit your application that you would pick one of. You can only submit to one of them, but this is a great, easy application to put forward to them. It is not as intensive as some other applications. Just for an example, the project description is limited to 5,500 characters, and that's including spaces. So, if you put together your thoughts on paper and put it together on there, it's a relatively simple application form, you can be considered for a grant here. Next, I'd like to talk about Wisconsin Humanities. They have both mini and major grants. I'm just going to kind of touch on the major grants here. This is on a little bit bigger level than what we had talked about, at least with the smaller targeted Franklin Research Grant. But they award grants on a local level. So they're looking for locally initiated public humanities programs. And they award grants to those humanities programs and that encourage greater public participation in humanities programming. They want to promote conversation, they want to spark imagination, they want to do all that for those programs here in Wisconsin. Every year they award $200,000 in grants. So while it is just a Wisconsin-based foundation, it's a pretty good chunk of money that would be available to those who are willing and able and a good fit for what they're looking to fund. Again, I want to point out, though, that this one is for humanities programs that typically are like reflective experiences, but they have that public engagement component to them. And that can take a wide array of forms. That could be exhibitions, performances, community discussions, guest speakers, workshops, oral history, everything that you would think about engaging others with, offering that up to the public they may be interested in. I also want to note, though, there is one additional requirement that is not always included with grant requests, and that is a one-to-one match. So that just means that your request has to be matched by another source of support, and that can be cash, that can be in kind, anything like that. And our office is here to help with that if you're interested in submitting something. They offer, they have Meg, who's there. She is absolutely fantastic, and she is very helpful, very responsive. If you're interested, she wants to hear about your work, and she is more than willing and enjoys giving feedback on how, if your project is a good fit, if maybe not, how it could be, and things like that. So definitely something to check out. Their website is great. They have tips available for putting together your project or your proposal. They have a list of awardees, previous awardees. So all of that together really helps you put together a proposal for their particular organization. And then on a larger scale is the John Templeton Foundation. And so this would be a great consideration for those who have more developed project, a project on a much larger scale, things like that. This foundation in particular seeks to support research and really catalyze the conversations that they describe as inspiring people with awe and wonder. So that can be a whole lot of things. And they cross lots of boundaries, whether it's disciplines, geographical boundaries, anything like that. They like having it touch many different areas, and they're open to all of those areas. They seek to have their grantees produce some kind of field leading scholarship. So in their field. And one example was a grantee, there were grantees that have opened up and started some new topics and some conversations leading to scientific investigation even. That could be around some really tough and complex subjects such as prayer and gratitude and immortality and imagination, things that may not seem tangible, but are things that are important in our lives. What else? So again, they're looking, as you can tell by just those concepts, they're looking at those big ideas, those large scale projects. They do have, so while large scale, they do fund projects that fall into some predefined funding areas, they call them, and that can range anything from human sciences to free market to philosophy and theology. Again, public engagement is one of their funding areas, character and virtue development. That's all things that they're interested in. They do want to have a discrete project, though. It can't just be, generally speaking, you're seeking support for your work. You do want to define a project when you're giving forward something to them. Their application also has 2 stages. The application, not just the review, but the actual application. The first is an online funding inquiry, and then if they like that, you go on and you're invited to submit a detailed full proposal. So while this is a larger foundation and they get a lot of requests, unfortunately, an example like this, they wouldn't offer feedback on your application like I've mentioned with some of the other ones. Essentially, that OFI, or that first stage application, is your pitch to the foundation to see if your project aligns with what they fund. It's hard to see this, but I will send this out too. Here's a great calendar for everybody just to have as a reference. And you can see that there's lots of opportunities out there throughout the year. The opportunities can sometimes be annually, a couple times a year. Just know that wherever you are in your work, I'm sure there is something out there that we can help you find to support it. And speaking of support, I do want to point out again the database pivot that is available here at Marquette University. There is a curated search that has been developed for those in the field of humanities. And when you're ready to start looking for funding for a project that you've identified, this is one place you can also go to. I can send this out. You can find it on our website. You can find it in Pivot. Any questions, just let me know. And all of these search results are out there currently for you to peruse. So wrapping up, how we can help, and briefly touched on through my presentation here. So RSP can help with it, whether depending what stage you're at and where your needs are. Finding the funding, developing that project. Maybe it's finding someone else here at the university or some outside partners to start getting that community engagement. We can help with that. We have a grant writer editor on our staff that can help put together and edit the narrative that you have, and then putting together that application itself here to do if it is a more complex application. I do have to point out too, we do have a system, Koali, which is our grants management system. That is where we will kind of put a copy of your application and document what you're all doing. That is where we sign off and have everybody's approval. But we can help you with that process as well. All of this information is found on our website. Let's see what I got left. I think this is my last one. So key takeaways, start early. It's always great to start to engage us, ORSP, or Drew too, as far as resources for with the center, and start brainstorming and work with us and use us as a support service to develop your ideas and your projects and your collaborations. Many projects take time, especially with that community engaged work that Drew was talking about earlier, and that's really trending right now, that holistic approach, that applied research. You want to make sure it's starting to have, jump right in and have that impact on the broader community. All of that takes time, takes some relationship building. So keep that in mind when you want to start mapping out a timeline. But invest that time, and I think it could be really worth it. It'll help you in your work. It'll help you put together a fantastic project that we can put forward to some other sponsors and then get funding for it. When you're investing your time, I encourage you to participate in events, whether it's through the center, in your own departments, at the university in general. I know our office has the Forward Thinking Research Symposium coming up at the end of November. Take the time to really get engaged with other people around you and see how your work can work in tandem and supplement and complement other people's work too. And then both of you, will elevate the research and the work that you're doing. So I hope you noticed with the calendar and this list of opportunities and the database that I spoke of that had thousands of opportunities, there is a lot out there, and I'm sure there is a fit for whatever support you're looking for, whatever stage you're at with your work. Just know that we can work with you to help you find where that fit is. And I encourage you to think outside the box too. As I mentioned, you're going to want to talk to other people around you here on campus, in your community. But I think as a humanist, you have some very valuable skill sets and some expertise that can bring a lot of value to the broader community, to other people's projects, and really take everyone's work to the next level. So that holistic approach and that community engaged approach back to what Drew was saying at the very beginning, is really, really important these days, but really a focus point and a priority for those that are in a place to sponsor and fund projects as well. That's all I have. I do want to point out that October, I found out when I was looking up all this, is National Arts and Humanities Month. So that's fantastic. Yeah, we should celebrate that. Drew, is there anything else that you want to add or say before I wrap up?
No, not really. Thank you so much for the invitation and for conveying all of that information. And just a reminder that I'm here and you can reach us at the CIFA email, or you can email me directly. I'm happy to help with any networking or connections, and yeah, just helping facilitate the process if you're interested in any of the work we're doing at the CIFA.
Yes, that's great. We're here, yep, as a sounding board and a source of support. So with that, I will wrap it up. Thank you very much.
Thanks.